Hey guys, tonight we're going to experience something that would make your worst Monday morning look like a spa day. Picture this. You're cozy in your memory foam mattress, maybe scrolling through TikTok one last time, when suddenly, bam, you wake up in 1860 and spoiler alert, you're a Victorian woman, no Wi Fi, no voting rights, and definitely no pants, just 20 pounds of fabric, whalebone crushing your ribs, and a society that thinks showing your ankles is basically OnlyFans. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing people from around the world drifting off to historically accurate nightmares together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes flutter open to unfamiliar sensations. The mattress beneath you feels wrong, too firm, too high off the ground. There's an odd smell in the air, like lavender mixed with something vaguely metallic, coal smoke. You'll later learn the room is dim, lit only by pale morning light filtering through heavy velvet curtains. You try to sit up and immediately realize something is very, very wrong. Your torso won't bend properly. It's like you're wearing some kind of rigid armor around your middle. You glance down and nearly scream. Your body is encased in a white cotton nightgown that goes from your neck to your ankles, but underneath, you can feel something hard and unyielding, a corset, even in your sleep. Victorian you is wearing a sleeping corset because apparently Victorian women's spines couldn't be trusted to exist without architectural support for even 8 hours. The bed you're in is massive, with 4 dark wooden posts reaching toward a canopy overhead. The sheets feel different too, rougher than what you're used to, though they smell fresh with lye soap and starch. Everything smells like starch here. You'll discover that Victorians basically starched everything that wasn't actively on fire, and sometimes even things that were. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, a production in itself, since the bed is so high, you need a little step stool to get down. Your bare feet hit a cold wooden floor, no cozy carpet in sight, just hard, polished wood with a few scattered rugs that look more decorative than functional. The room is freezing. You can see your breath forming little clouds in the morning air. Central heating, that's about as real as unicorns in 1860. A bell pull hangs beside your bed, a thick, embroidered rope that disappears into the wall. You have a vague idea what it's for from period dramas, but the thought of actually summoning another human being to dress you feels absurd. You're a grown woman who's been dressing herself since you were 3. Surely you can figure out Victorian clothing. Oh, sweet summer child, you have no idea what's coming. The door creaks open before you can even reach for that bell pull, and in bustles a young woman in a plain black dress with a white cap perched on her head. She looks about 19, with tired eyes that suggest she's been up since 4 in the morning, because she has. This is Mary, your lady's maid, and she's about to introduce you to the Olympic sport that is getting dressed in 1860. Good morning, miss, she says, bobbing a little curtsy that makes you feel immediately uncomfortable. Shall we begin your toilette? Toilette, not toilet. Though honestly, your first question is about exactly that, because your bladder is sending urgent signals and you haven't spotted anything resembling a bathroom. Mary gestures to a decorative screen in the corner of the room. Behind it sits your new best friend and worst enemy, the chamber pot. It's porcelain, painted with delicate roses, and it's where you'll be doing your business because indoor plumbing is still a fever dream for most households. You stare at it. It stares back. Mary pretends not to notice your existential crisis as you realize you're about to pee in a fancy bowl that someone, probably Mary, will have to empty later. The Victorians loved to pretend bodily functions didn't exist, while simultaneously creating an entire servant class dedicated to dealing with them. Historians still argue whether this level of cognitive dissonance was sustainable or just collectively agreed upon madness. After that delightful experience, Mary begins what can only be described as a sartorial assault. First, she helps you out of your nightgown and into your chemise, basically a thin cotton slip that serves as your base layer. It's the only thing between your skin and the torture devices to come. Next comes the corset, and oh boy, this isn't the sexy, lace up the back situation you've seen in movies. This is serious engineering. The corset is made of whalebone, actual whale baleen, because apparently Victorian fashion required ocean mammal casualties. It has about 50 hooks and eyes down the front, and Mary starts fastening them with practiced efficiency. You can feel your ribs compressing, your breathing becoming shallower. When she moves to the back to tighten the laces, you grab the bedpost for support. How tight would Miss prefer it today? Mary asks, as if you're choosing a coffee order and not the circumference of your internal organs. Comfortable, you venture hopefully. Mary looks confused. Comfortable isn't really a concept that exists in Victorian women's fashion. She settles for what she calls moderate tightness, which means you can still breathe but forget about bending over to tie your shoes. Not that you'll be tying shoes, that's what Mary is for. Next comes the crinoline, and this is where things get truly ridiculous. It's essentially a cage for your lower half, made of steel hoops that expand your skirt to roughly the circumference of a small garden shed. Mary helps you step into it, and suddenly you're taking up 3 times as much space as a normal human being. You knock over a small side table just turning around. This is your life now. The layers keep coming. Petticoats, yes, plural, the underskirt, the overskirt, and finally the bodice, which buttons up the back with approximately 7,000 tiny pearl buttons. Mary's fingers fly over them with the speed of someone who's been doing this since she was 12, which she has. Child labor laws? Another unicorn in 1860. The strangest part is the weight. You're now wearing about 20 pounds of fabric and infrastructure. Your grandmother's complaint about carrying a heavy purse suddenly seems quaint. You're carrying a heavy everything, and it's attached to your body like some kind of textile parasite. Now for your hair, miss, Mary announces, and you realize you're only halfway done. She gestures to a vanity table where an arsenal of pins, combs, and mysterious bottles awaits. Your modern pixie cut or casual ponytail isn't going to cut it here. Victorian hair is serious business, involving hot irons heated over candles, hello, fire hazard, various pomades made from bear fat, yes, actual bear, and enough hairpins to stock a small armory. As Mary begins the architectural process of constructing your hairstyle, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the looking glass. The woman staring back is unrecognizable, cinched, caged, and about to be crowned with what looks like a small sculpture made of your own hair. You're not sure whether to laugh or cry, but either would probably pop a corset string, so you just sit very, very still. The dining room assault begins the moment you attempt to navigate the doorway. Your crinoline, having apparently declared war on architectural features, wedges itself firmly in the doorframe. You have to turn sideways and do this awkward shuffling motion that makes you look like a well-dressed crab. Mary pretends not to notice. Bless her. But you catch the butler hiding what might be a smirk behind his perfectly waxed mustache. The breakfast table stretches before you like a silver-plated battlefield. There are more forks at your place setting than you've used in your entire modern life. Spoons of varying sizes lurk to the right, each apparently designated for a specific purpose that everyone except you understands implicitly. A knife rests at an angle that probably means something in Victorian semaphore. You're basically illiterate in cutlery. Good morning, daughter, booms a voice from the head of the table. Your Victorian father, it turns out, is a portly man with magnificent mutton chops that look like two ferrets attached to his face. He's reading the Times, which in 1860 is actually news printed on paper. Imagine that. Beside him sits your Victorian mother, a woman so tightly corseted you're concerned she might actually be two separate people joined at the waist. Did you sleep well? Your mother asks, though it's clear from her tone that only one answer is acceptable. Victorian families, you're learning, operate on a complex system of saying things they don't mean while meaning things they don't say. The breakfast spread would make a modern nutritionist weep. There's porridge that looks like wallpaper paste, kippers, which are apparently fish that someone decided to smoke until they achieved the texture of leather, kidneys floating in some kind of brown sauce, and toast that could double as roof shingles. The Victorians, it seems, believed breakfast should be an endurance trial. You reach for what looks like the safest option, toast, and immediately cause a scandal. Apparently, you've used the fish fork. Your mother's eyebrows shoot up so high they nearly achieve escape velocity. The butler discreetly slides the correct implement toward you while removing the offending fork with the solemnity of someone defusing a bomb. Mrs. Pemberton's daughter was seen walking in Hyde Park with the Ashford boy yesterday, your mother announces, spreading marmalade with violent precision, without a chaperone. The way she says, without a chaperone, makes it sound like the girl was walking naked through London, swinging a battle axe. Your father harumphs from behind his paper. This is apparently the Victorian equivalent of a mic drop. You attempt to eat your porridge while processing the fact that taking a walk alone is basically social suicide. The spoon, once you identify the correct one, feels weird in your gloved hand. Oh yes, you're wearing gloves. At breakfast. Because Victorian ladies' hands were apparently too scandalous for mealtimes. We've arranged for you to take tea with the Weatherby family this afternoon, your mother continues, dissecting a kipper with surgical precision. Their son Edgar has recently returned from India. The way she emphasizes India makes it clear that Edgar has achieved the Victorian equivalent of getting verified on Twitter. He's been to the colonies, which automatically makes him marriage material. Historians still debate whether the British Empire was built on tea, racism, or mothers trying to marry off their daughters, but it was probably all three. Edgar has excellent prospects. Your father contributes from behind his paper fortress, something in the civil service. Something in the civil service. That's like saying someone works in tech in 2024. It could mean anything from running the empire to counting paper clips in a basement somewhere. But prospects are prospects. And in Victorian England, that's apparently enough to build a marriage on. You try to imagine spending your life with someone named Edgar who has something in the civil service and nearly choke on your kedgeree, a breakfast dish that seems to be rice mixed with fish and sadness. Your mother immediately launches into a lecture about proper deportment while eating, which apparently involves chewing each bite exactly 32 times. The Victorians had a lot of time on their hands. After breakfast, you'll practice your piano, your mother declares, making it sound less like a suggestion and more like a military directive. Then French conversation with Madame Beaumont, followed by your dancing lesson. We cannot have you stumbling through the Ashford ball like last time. Last time? You have no memory of last time, but from your mother's expression, it was apparently your personal Victorian Waterloo. You're starting to realize that being a Victorian lady is essentially a full-time job, except instead of a salary, you get married off to Edgar from the civil service. The morning room, where Victorian ladies conduct their social warfare, is painted a shade of green that probably has lead in it. Everything in this era has lead in it. The paint, the makeup, the water pipes. It's like the Victorians were playing a massive game of how many toxic substances can we incorporate into daily life, and winning. You're perched on a settee that's about as comfortable as sitting on a decorative brick, your crinoline exploding around you like you're smuggling a circus tent. On the table before you sits a silver tray containing your weapons, calling cards. These little rectangles of cardstock are apparently crucial to Victorian social life, and they have more rules than modern tax code. Your mother is explaining the system with the intensity of someone describing nuclear launch codes. You must leave 2 cards when calling on a married woman, one for her, one for her husband. But if she's not at home, you leave 3, unless it's Tuesday, in which case. A knock at the door interrupts this dissertation on cardboard etiquette. The butler enters with his own silver tray, upon which rest several calling cards from this morning's visitors. Your mother examines them like a forensic investigator. Mrs. Ashworth called, but didn't stay. See? She turned down the corner of her card. That means she came in person rather than sending a servant. The way your mother says this suggests Mrs. Ashworth has achieved some sort of Victorian bonus points. We must return her call within 3 days, or it's practically a declaration of war. This is insane. You're essentially playing a real life version of Battleship, but with social visits, and the stakes are your entire reputation. Historians still argue whether Victorian calling card etiquette was a complex form of social networking or just collective madness with extra steps. The doorbell rings again. This time, it's an actual visitor who intends to stay. Mrs. Pemberton and her infamous daughter Charlotte, she of the unchaperoned walk. They sweep into the room in a rustle of silk and judgment. My dear Mrs. Fairweather, Mrs. Pemberton says to your mother, air kissing in the vicinity of her cheek without actually making contact. How delightful to find you at home. This is a lie. Everyone knows morning calls happen between 3 and 5 p.m. because Victorian logic. So, of course, your mother is at home. She's trapped here by social convention, just like you're trapped in this whalebone cage of a corset. Charlotte Pemberton looks about your age, but with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who's been playing this social game since birth. She settles beside you on the settee, her own crinoline battling yours for territory. It's like two jellyfish trying to share a fishbowl. I hear you're to meet Edgar Weatherby, she says, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. He's quite handsome, though I heard he contracted some frightful disease in Bombay, something to do with his liver. This passes for hot gossip in 1860. You're trying to formulate a response when the tea service arrives, presenting a whole new minefield of etiquette. The teacups are so delicate they look like they'll shatter if you breathe on them wrong. The handle is too small for even a single finger, so you're supposed to pinch it delicately between thumb and forefinger while somehow balancing a saucer in your other hand. One lump or two? Your mother asks Mrs. Pemberton, wielding sugar tongs with the precision of a neurosurgeon. This is actually a loaded question. Sugar is expensive, so accepting 2 lumps is basically saying, I assume you can afford it. But taking only 1 might imply you think they can't. It's like Victorian 4D chess, and then everyone's a grandmaster except you. The conversation meanders through acceptable topics. The weather, dreadful. Someone's new bonnet, shocking. And the latest serial in the Cornhill magazine, improving. No one mentions politics, money, or anything actually interesting. It's like Twitter, but with better grammar and more repression. We simply must call on the Weatherbys tomorrow, Mrs. Pemberton declares, which is obviously a reconnaissance mission disguised as a social visit. One likes to know the family before any understanding develops. Understanding, that's Victorian code for before we legally bind our children together for life based on a few supervised conversations and his steady income. You catch Charlotte's eye and see a flicker of something, sympathy, warning. It's hard to tell under all the social programming. After exactly 30 minutes, longer would be presumptuous, shorter would be rude. The Pembertons prepare to leave. This involves another 5 minutes of gathering gloves, adjusting bonnets, and making vague promises to meet again soon. You stand to see them out and immediately knock over a small table with your crinoline. The Victorians must have had furniture insurance specifically for skirt-related incidents. Hyde Park stretches before you like a verdant obstacle course designed specifically to humiliate women in crinolines. The paths are graveled, which means every step sounds like you're smuggling a maraca band under your skirts. Your mother walks beside you, armed with a parasol that she wields like a combination of sun shield and social weapon. Apparently, getting a tan is tantamount to admitting you work outdoors like some kind of peasant. The promenade hour has begun, and the park is packed with London's elite, pretending they're here for fresh air rather than the elaborate mating ritual this actually represents. Gentlemen on horseback trot by, tipping their tall hats at ladies who pretend not to notice while absolutely noticing. It's like Tinder, but with more horses and less honesty. Your boots, kid leather things that button up to mid-calf with approximately 40 tiny buttons, are already pinching. They have heels just high enough to make walking treacherous, but not high enough to actually be useful. Walking in them while managing 20 pounds of skirt is like trying to navigate a bouncy castle while drunk, except you're stone cold sober and everyone's watching. Posture, dear, your mother hisses as you stumble over absolutely nothing. Glide, don't gallop. Gliding is apparently something Victorian ladies are supposed to do naturally, like secreting pearls or fainting on cue. You attempt to glide and immediately catch your crinoline on a bench. The steel hoops make a sound like a xylophone being murdered. A passing gentleman pretends not to notice, while his companion, a woman with a bustle so large she could use it as a shelf, smirks behind her fan. Fans, you're discovering, are the Victorian equivalent of smartphones. Ladies communicate entire conversations through fan positioning. Fan pressed to heart means, I love you. Fan twirling means, I'm single. And fan snapped shut means, back off, creeper. You don't have a fan, which probably sends its own message. I'm too poor, uncultured American to participate in your weird hand semaphore cult. Oh, look, your mother says with fake surprise that fools exactly no one. The Weatherbees. And there they are, approaching like a Victorian storm front. Mrs. Weatherby, a woman whose corset appears to be winning its battle against her internal organs, leads the charge. Behind her walks Edgar, and you have to admit, Charlotte Pemberton wasn't lying about the handsome part. He's got that Victorian aesthetic down, pale, vaguely consumptive looking, with a mustache that probably has its own grooming kit. Mrs. Fairweather, Miss Fairweather, what a delightful surprise, Mrs. Weatherby exclaims, as if this meeting wasn't orchestrated with military precision. You remember my son Edgar, recently returned from India? Edgar bows, which is your cue to curtsy. You attempt this and immediately realize your crinoline has other ideas. It swings forward, then back. Like you're a human church bell, you manage to recover without falling, but Edgar's mouth twitches in what might be suppressed laughter. Great. You've been in his presence for 30 seconds, and you're already comic relief. Perhaps the young people might walk together, Mrs. Weatherby suggests, which is Victorian for let's see if they can stand each other for 10 minutes without visible disgust. And so you find yourself promenading with Edgar while your mothers trail behind at precisely the correct chaperoning distance, close enough to prevent scandal, far enough to allow awkward conversation. It started to drizzle, that particularly British rain that can't decide if it's mist or actual precipitation, and your silk dress is beginning to wilt like Victorian lettuce. I trust you're enjoying the weather, Edgar says, apparently without irony. Oh, yes, you reply, matching his tone. Nothing says enjoyment quite like damp silk and the constant threat of pneumonia. He actually laughs, a short, surprised bark that makes his mother's head swivel like a Victorian periscope. Apparently, ladies aren't supposed to be funny. Add that to the list of things you're failing at, right after walking without incident and sitting down without knocking over furniture. I heard you spent time in India, you venture, because that seems like safe territory. 3 years in the civil service, he confirms, mostly spent dying of heat and pretending to understand cricket. Historians debate whether the British Empire was held together by bureaucracy or sheer stubborn refusal to admit they were uncomfortable, but Edgar's comment suggests it might have been both. He tells you about monsoons and maharajas while you concentrate on not tripping over your own skirts. The path is getting crowded, and maneuvering a crinoline through pedestrian traffic is like trying to parallel park a yacht. A rider passes too close, and you have to jump back to avoid being trampled. This sends your crinoline swinging wildly, and you collide with Edgar like a well-dressed wrecking ball. He steadies you with a hand on your elbow, scandalous contact that makes your mother cough meaningfully from behind. Perhaps we should return home, your mother suggests. The weather is turning. The afternoon tea catastrophe begins before you even reach the Weatherby residence. Your carriage wheel catches in a rut, sending you sliding across the bench seat like a silk-wrapped bowling ball. Your crinoline inverts, giving the street urchins outside a shocking glimpse of your pantalettes. Your mother looks like she might spontaneously combust from mortification while fumbling to help you reassemble your dignity and your skirts. The Weatherby drawing room is a testament to Victorian excess, every surface covered with doilies, dried flowers under glass domes, and enough chintz to upholster a small country. You navigate through this obstacle course of occasional tables and ottoman ambushes while Mrs. Weatherby watches your progress like a hawk eyeing a particularly clumsy mouse. How delightful that you could join us, she says, gesturing to a chair that looks specifically designed to be impossible to sit in while wearing a crinoline. You attempt to lower yourself gracefully and end up perched on the edge like a well-dressed gargoyle, your skirts billowing around you in defiance of physics and good sense. The tea service arrives on a cart that probably costs more than most people's houses. The china pattern features hand-painted roses and enough gold leaf to fund a small war. Mrs. Weatherby pours with the concentration of someone performing nuclear surgery, the tea streaming in a perfect amber arc that makes you wonder if there's a Victorian certification program for pouring liquids. One must be so careful with young ladies' reputations these days, Mrs. Weatherby says, which is Victorian code for I'm about to destroy someone socially. Why, just yesterday I heard that the Pemberton girl was seen entering a bookshop, unaccompanied. A bookshop. She says it like Charlotte was caught dealing opium in Whitechapel. You bite into a cucumber sandwich, which is literally just cucumber on bread, because Victorian cuisine is where flavor goes to die, and try to look appropriately scandalized. Edgar sits across from you, managing to look both bored and amused. He's perfected that Victorian gentleman's art of appearing to pay attention while clearly thinking about something else entirely, probably cricket, or the Empire, or whether his liver really is affected by whatever he caught in Bombay. Miss Fairweather, Mrs. Weatherby turns her attention to you like a spotlight powered by social anxiety. Do tell us about your accomplishments. I understand you play the pianoforte. This is a trap. If you claim to play well, you'll be forced to perform. If you claim to play poorly, you're admitting to being an unaccomplished failure as a woman. You go for the middle ground. I enjoy music, though I fear I'm still very much a student. How refreshingly modest. She makes modest sound like pathetic. Edgar, didn't you say you adore ladies who play Chopin? Edgar, who looks like he wouldn't recognize Chopin if the composer appeared and bit him on his impeccably tailored leg, nods dutifully. Indeed, nothing quite like music. The conversation continues in this vein, polite words wielded like weapons, tea consumed in microscopic sips, and enough subtext to fill a library. You learn that Edgar has prospects, still mysteriously undefined, enjoys sport, which could mean anything from fox hunting to competitive mustache grooming, and finds you quite agreeable, which is apparently high praise in Victorian courtship language. Just when you think you might escape without major incident, disaster strikes in the form of a rogue scone. You're attempting to spread clotted cream with a knife the size of a toothpick when the scone commits suicide, launching itself off your plate and onto Edgar's lap. The cream follows in a graceful arc, landing on his vest like a dairy-based declaration of war. The room freezes. In the hierarchy of Victorian social disasters, you've just achieved something between forgetting to wear gloves and murdering the Queen. Mrs. Weatherby's face cycles through several expressions before settling on one that suggests she's reconsidering Edgar's entire future. I'm so terribly sorry, you stammer, reaching forward with your napkin, then realizing that touching his lap would upgrade this from disaster to full-scale apocalypse. Edgar, to his credit, laughs. Actually laughs, not the polite titter expected in these situations. Well, I suppose that's one way to make an impression, he says, dabbing at the cream with his own napkin, though I generally prefer my scones to stay on the plate. His mother looks like she's been force-fed a lemon soaked in vinegar. Your mother has achieved a shade of red typically reserved for tropical sunsets. But something passes between you and Edgar, a moment of shared recognition that this whole elaborate dance is faintly ridiculous. He winks, so quickly you almost miss it. Perhaps we should be going, your mother suggests in a tone that brooks no argument. We wouldn't want to overstay our welcome. The extraction process involves another round of curtsies, promises to meet again, lies, and compliments on the tea, more lies. As you navigate back through the chintz minefield toward the door, you hear Edgar murmur to his mother, "Actually, I found her quite refreshing." The music room is your new torture chamber, complete with a piano that sounds like it's been tuned by someone with a personal vendetta against harmony. Your music teacher, Herr Zimmermann, is a small German man with a mustache that quivers with disapproval every time you hit a wrong note, which is approximately every third one. He speaks English like he's chewing rocks, and his teaching method consists mainly of sighing dramatically and muttering in German, 9, 9, 9. He stops you mid Clementi. The fingering. You play like you are wearing the mittens. You're not wearing mittens, but you are wearing gloves, because Victorian ladies' bare hands are apparently too scandalous for piano keys. The gloves are made of kid leather so thin they're basically theoretical, but they still make every note feel like you're playing through a layer of butter. From the beginning, Herr Zimmermann commands, and you launch back into the sonatina that you're beginning to hate with the passion of 1,000 suns. The Victorian piano bench is too high, too hard, and designed by someone who clearly despised the human spine. Your corset prevents you from breathing properly, which is suboptimal when you're trying to maintain proper tempo. Your fingers stumble over a particularly vindictive passage, and Herr Zimmermann actually whimpers. In Vienna, the young ladies play like angels. Here, he trails off, but his mustache completes the sentence. Here, they play like tone-deaf elephants. After an hour of musical martyrdom, you're released to the equally delightful world of needlework. Your embroidery teacher, Miss Pritchard, is a spinster who speaks in whispers and looks at you like you might spontaneously burst into flames. She's approximately 100 years old and has devoted her entire life to the art of stabbing fabric with tiny implements. Today, we shall work on your sampler, she breathes, producing a piece of linen that already features your previous attempts at embroidery. It looks like a drunk spider learned cross-stitch. Remember, neat stitches reflect a neat mind. If that's true, your mind is apparently a garbage fire. You pick up the needle, roughly the size of a human hair, and attempt to thread it with silk floss. The Victorians, not content with making everything else difficult, have decided that embroidery thread should be as thin as cobwebs and twice as fragile. Smaller stitches, dear, Miss Pritchard whispers as you stab frantically at the linen. A lady's stitches should be invisible to the naked eye. This is literally impossible. You're creating what can generously be called textile abstract art, while Miss Pritchard makes tiny, disapproving sounds. Your fingers, already sore from piano torture, begin to cramp. You've pricked yourself so many times that your sampler is developing an interesting pink pattern that definitely wasn't in the original design. Perhaps we should move on to watercolors, Miss Pritchard suggests, after you've mangled another rose into something resembling a diseased cabbage. Oh, good. You think, painting. How hard can that be? Very hard. It turns out, Victorian watercolors aren't about expression or creativity. They're about painting the exact same subjects, flowers, landscapes, and more flowers, in the exact same way every other lady paints them. Your art teacher, Mr. Ashford, no relation to the Ashfords of ball fame, he's quick to clarify, has opinions about everything from brush angle to the moral implications of using too much cerulean blue. Ladies paint with delicacy, he instructs, demonstrating a brushstroke so light it barely disturbs the paper. We're creating beauty, not whatever this is. This is your attempt at a rose, which looks more like a crime scene. The watercolors themselves are probably toxic. Half the pigments contain lead, mercury, or arsenic. Historians debate whether Victorian ladies were so pale because they avoided the sun or because they were slowly poisoning themselves with art supplies. Try again, Mr. Ashford sighs, handing you a fresh sheet of paper. And remember, botanical accuracy is paramount. You're not sure what's botanically accurate about painting roses the size of cabbages, but you dutifully try again. The brush feels wrong in your gloved hand. The colors run together like they're trying to escape, and your rose ends up looking like it's melting, which, given the temperature in this room and your layers of clothing, is exactly how you feel. By the time your accomplishment training is over, your fingers are bleeding, your brain is numb, and you've created nothing that wouldn't be improved by immediate burning. But this is your life now, days filled with producing terrible art and worse music, all in the service of becoming marriageable. Tomorrow, we'll begin a French conversation, your mother announces at dinner, as if your day wasn't already a linguistic nightmare. Madame Beaumont comes highly recommended. She taught the Ashford girls. The Ashford girls, you've learned, are the gold standard of Victorian accomplishment. They probably embroider with their eyes closed and play piano with their toes. You stab at your boiled beef with more violence than strictly necessary and wonder if anyone's ever escaped Victorian lady training by claiming sudden amnesia. The dining room blazes with the light of approximately 17,000 candles because gas lighting is both modern and terrifying. The new gas jets installed last month hiss like angry snakes and occasionally shoot tiny fireballs, which everyone politely ignores. Your father insists gas is the future, though given how often the dining room curtains catch fire, the future might be shorter than expected. You're squeezed between Colonel Pemberton, who smells like wet wool and empire, and young Mr. Ashford, who has been describing his butterfly collection for the past 20 minutes. Apparently, he has over 300 specimens, each one as dead and pinned as this conversation. Your face hurts from maintaining an expression of polite interest while he explains the difference between Lepidoptera subspecies. The Morpho Menelaus is particularly magnificent, he drones on, gesturing with his fish fork. The blue is quite extraordinary when the light catches it just so, and you murmur something that could be agreement while trying to navigate your own fish course. The sole a la something French arrives swimming in a butter sauce that immediately attacks your green silk dress. Eating in a corset is like trying to perform surgery while someone sits on your chest. Every bite is a calculated risk. I hear you've taken up phrenology, Dr. Whitmore. Your mother addresses the man across from you, a gentleman whose own skull looks like it's been used for demonstration purposes. Such a fascinating science. Science. They call measuring skull bumps to determine personality science. Dr. Whitmore launches into an enthusiastic explanation of how the shape of one's occipital protuberance reveals criminal tendencies. Historians still argue whether the Victorians genuinely believed this nonsense or were just incredibly bored, but either way, you're now listening to a man explain how your forehead suggests musical aptitude. Your piano teacher would beg to differ. The courses keep coming, like some kind of gastronomic assault. Soup, turtle, which makes you sad. Fish, the butter sauce continues its reign of terror. Meat, something that might once have been lamb. Game, definitely pheasant. Shot by someone at this table who won't stop talking about it. And approximately 17 side dishes that all taste like variations on boiled. The Irish question is really quite simple, Colonel Pemberton announces, because nothing improves digestion quite like casual colonialism over dinner. They simply need more civilization. You take a large sip of wine, your third glass, because Victorian drinking customs are surprisingly liberal when it comes to alcohol and terrifyingly strict about everything else. The wine is probably fortified with lead, like everything else in this era, but at least it makes the conversation bearable. Speaking of civilization, Mrs. Ashford interjects, did you hear about the railway accident in Birmingham? 30 miles an hour. It's simply not natural. The table erupts in agreement that trains are humanity's hubris made manifest. Mr. Ashford pauses his butterfly lecture to opine that if God had intended humans to travel at such speeds, he would have given us wheels instead of feet. You bite your tongue to keep from pointing out that by this logic, humans also shouldn't wear clothes or use forks. The gaslight chooses this moment to flare dramatically, casting everyone in a hellish orange glow. The butler rushes to adjust it while pretending nothing unusual is happening. This is peak Victorian behavior, ignoring obvious danger while obsessing over which spoon to use. Miss Fairweather, Dr. Whitmore turns his phrenological attention to you. Have you given thought to mesmerism? I believe the female constitution is particularly susceptible to magnetic influences. Bacon, before you can ask what the hell magnetic influences are, he produces a pocket watch and starts swinging it. Simply focus on the watch, he instructs, while everyone leans in with interest. This is apparently acceptable dinner entertainment in 1860, attempted hypnosis between the fish and meat courses. You stare at the watch to be polite, while secretly wondering if you can mesmerize yourself back to the 21st century. The watch swings, your corset creaks. Mr. Ashford resumes describing butterfly genitalia with disturbing enthusiasm. This is your life now. I don't think it's working, you finally announce, which seems to disappoint everyone. Dr. Whitmore suggests your skull shape might be naturally resistant to magnetic influence, which he phrases like it's a medical condition. The meat course arrives, roast beef the color and texture of shoe leather, accompanied by vegetables boiled into submission. The Victorians have discovered approximately one cooking method, and they're really committed to it. You saw away at your beef, while the conversation turns to the shocking news that someone's housemaid was seen reading a novel. Mary Shelley has much to answer for, your mother declares, giving servants ideas. The irony of discussing the dangers of literacy while being served by people who aren't allowed to read isn't lost on you, but pointing this out would be like setting off a social atomic bomb. Instead, you nod and try to look concerned about the servant literacy crisis, while privately hoping Mary, your maid, not Shelley, is secretly reading everything she can get her hands on. The bathroom horror show begins with what the Victorians optimistically call a water closet. though it contains neither water nor anything resembling a closet. It's more like a wooden throne of lies positioned over a pipe that leads to God knows where. The flush mechanism involves pulling a chain that releases approximately half a teaspoon of water, which does nothing except make noise and provide false hope. Your evening ablutions are a masterclass in Victorian danger. The washstand holds a porcelain basin and pitcher, no running water, because why would anything be easy? The water is lukewarm at best, having been heated in the kitchen and carried up 3 flights of stairs by poor Mary, who probably deserves hazard pay. "Shall I help you with your toilette, miss?" Mary asks, producing an arsenal of bottles and jars that would make a modern chemist nervous. The face powder is pure white lead. You know this because it says Bloom of Youth lead powder right on the tin, like they're proud of the poison content. Mary dusts it over your face with a rabbit's foot, because nothing says hygiene like dead animal parts. And you immediately feel your skin start to tingle in what's probably the early stages of lead poisoning. "And now for your complexion cream," Mary continues, opening a jar that smells like roses and death. The label promises to remove freckles, tan, and other unfortunate blemishes. The main ingredient? Arsenic. Because if lead doesn't kill you, why not try arsenic? The Victorians, you're discovering, were basically running a long-term experiment in how many toxic substances the human body could absorb before giving up entirely. Your cosmetics table is less vanity set and more chemistry lab accident. There's rouge made from mercury, hair tonic containing cocaine for that extra shine, and tooth powder that definitely contains ground up chalk and probably something worse. "Your bath is ready, miss," Mary announces, gesturing to a copper tub that's been placed before the fireplace. The bath ritual is a production worthy of Wagner. First, a screen must be positioned for modesty, even though you're in your own bedroom. Then, the tub must be filled via a parade of servants carrying hot water from the kitchen. By the time it's full, the first buckets are already cold. You step into water that's approximately the temperature of disappointment. The soap is made from lye and animal fat and smells like someone tried to perfume a barnyard. It strips your skin with the efficiency of industrial solvent, while Mary stands ready with towels that have been warmed by the fire but have the texture of burlap. "Would Miss like the special hair treatment tonight?" Mary asks, producing a bottle that promises to give you lustrous locks worthy of a goddess. And the main ingredient appears to be bear grease mixed with what might be petroleum. You decline, suddenly appreciating your modern shampoo like never before. The tooth cleaning situation is even worse. Your toothbrush is made from boar bristles that feel like you're scrubbing your teeth with a tiny broom. The tooth powder tastes like chalk mixed with peppermint and sadness. Mary instructs you to rub your gums with a cloth soaked in brandy afterward, because the Victorians believed alcohol was the solution to everything, including dental hygiene. Dr. Morrison says the new tooth powder with cocaine is excellent for the gums, Mary offers helpfully. Mrs. Ashford swears by it. Of course she does. Mrs. Ashford probably starts her day with a lead facial, follows it with an arsenic chaser, and wonders why she feels dizzy by noon. Historians debate whether Victorian ladies were so prone to fainting because of their corsets or because they were basically walking pharmaceutical disasters. You move on to the hair preparation, which involves approximately 100 brush strokes with a brush that could double as a weapon. Mary sections your hair with the precision of a surveyor, applying various tonics and pomades that smell like a perfume factory exploded. The curling process involves metal tongs heated over a candle flame. It's like voluntary hair torture. Just a touch of belladonna for your eyes, miss, Mary suggests, holding up a bottle of what is essentially poison eye drops. It makes the pupils so beautifully large. You decline the offer to temporarily blind yourself for beauty. Your eyes are already watering from the lead powder and various fumes. Mary looks mildly disappointed, but moves on to the final touch, a generous splash of eau de toilette that contains enough alcohol to sterilize surgical equipment. By the time your bathroom ordeal is complete, you smell like a combination of funeral flowers and chemistry experiment. Your skin is probably absorbing enough heavy metals to set off a modern airport scanner, and you're starting to understand why Victorian ladies were always having attacks of nerves. It's not nerves, it's acute poisoning from their beauty routine. You crawl into bed, careful not to disturb the elaborate nighttime coiffure Mary has constructed to preserve your curls. Your face feels tight from the lead powder. Your teeth taste like chalk, and you're pretty sure the bear grease in your hair is attracting actual bears. Or maybe that's just the laudanum in the tooth powder starting to kick in. The doctor's visit begins with your mother announcing you've been looking peaked lately, which is Victorian for you exist as a woman and therefore must be ill. Dr. Morrison arrives with his black leather bag of horrors, looking like an undertaker who got lost on his way to a funeral. His mutton chops are so expansive, they have their own weather system, and his breath smells like he's been gargling with whatever's in those medicine bottles. Ah, yes, he says, peering at you through tiny spectacles. I see the problem immediately. Classic case of female hysteria. You've been in his presence for exactly 30 seconds and haven't even spoken, but apparently that's enough for a diagnosis. Female hysteria, you're learning, is the Victorian catch-all for woman doing anything besides embroidering quietly in a corner. The uterus is wandering, he declares with the confidence of someone who has definitely never seen a uterus. It's pressing upon the brain, causing nervous exhaustion. Your mother nods sagely, as if this makes perfect medical sense. The idea that your internal organs are taking unauthorized tours of your body doesn't seem to strike anyone as odd. Dr. Morrison opens his bag and starts producing bottles with labels that would make a modern FDA inspector faint. Laudanum for the nerves, he prescribes, handing over a bottle of what is essentially opium in liquid form. 3 times daily, and cocaine drops for any headaches, marvelous for clearing the mind. He continues pulling out bottles like a Victorian drug dealer. There's mercury for constipation, arsenic for your complexion, and something called Dr. Morrison's Special Tonic that probably contains all of the above, plus whatever he swept up from his laboratory floor. Now, for the hysteria itself, he says, producing a device that looks like it belongs in a horror movie. I recommend treatment with the new electrical stimulation machine, or perhaps hydrotherapy. Hydrotherapy, you soon learn, means being blasted with cold water while strapped to a table. The electrical stimulation involves attaching wires to various body parts and cranking a handle until you feel better or pass out, whichever comes first. Both treatments are based on the medical theory that if you traumatize someone enough, they'll stop complaining about their original symptoms. Of course, there's always the rest cure. Dr. Morrison muses. Complete bed rest for 6 weeks. No reading, no writing, no stimulation of any kind. Very effective for calming the female temperament. The rest cure is basically solitary confinement for women who dare to have opinions. Charlotte Perkins Gilman will write about it in a few decades, but right now it's considered cutting-edge treatment. You make a mental note to never, ever appear too intelligent, or you'll end up staring at yellow wallpaper until you actually do go insane. I've also been having some stomach troubles, you venture, hoping to redirect the conversation, Owen, from your apparently nomadic uterus. Ah, Dr. Morrison brightens. Tapeworms, most likely, very common in ladies of your class. I have just the thing. He produces a jar containing what appears to be actual tapeworm eggs. The treatment for tapeworms, apparently, is more tapeworms. Victorian medical logic is like regular logic's evil twin who failed out of school but still practices medicine. Or perhaps you need bleeding, he continues, now on a roll. When did you last have your humors balanced? Bloodletting. In 1860, while some doctors are starting to question whether draining people's blood actually helps anything, Dr. Morrison is old school. He produces a terrifying collection of lancets and starts explaining how removing a pint or two of blood will definitely cure everything from headaches to heartbreak. I think I'm feeling better, actually, you say quickly, backing away from the medieval torture implements. Nonsense. He advances with a bottle of something green. At least take the strengthening tonic. It has cocaine, morphine, and just a touch of chloroform. Wonderful for the constitution. Your mother insists you take a spoonful right there. It tastes like someone mixed cough syrup with paint thinner and spite. Within minutes, you feel simultaneously energized and like you're floating above your body. This is medicine, Victorian style. Throw every drug at the problem and see what happens. She should also try the vibrating chair, Dr. Buck Morrison suggests. Excellent for hysteria. The mechanical vibrations calm the nerves. The vibrating chair is exactly what it sounds like, a chair that vibrates. The Victorians invented vibrators for medical purposes, completely missing the reason why women kept coming back for treatments. Historians still debate whether Victorian doctors were genuinely clueless or just really committed to plausible deniability. And avoid any exciting novels, he adds sternly. Reading inflames the female brain. Stick to improving texts, sermons, household management guides, that sort of thing. As he packs up his bag of pharmaceutical nightmares, Dr. Morrison leaves you with enough drugs to start your own opium den and strict instructions to avoid anything remotely interesting. Your mother pays him what seems like a fortune for the privilege of being slowly poisoned, and everyone seems satisfied with this arrangement except your poor liver. The milliner's shop on Bond Street smells like a combination of dye factory and funeral parlor. Rolls of fabric in violent shades of green line the walls, and you're about to learn why that's terrifying. Mrs. Pemberton has dragged you and Charlotte here for a fitting because apparently your current wardrobe isn't tortuous enough. Ah, the new Skeely's green, the shop assistant exclaims, pulling out a bolt of fabric so vibrantly green it makes your eyes water. All the rage in Paris. Sheila's green, also known as Paris green, is gorgeous. It's also made with arsenic, lots and lots of arsenic. But the Victorians haven't quite connected the dots between their fashion choices and the mysterious illnesses that keep plaguing fashionable ladies. The fabric literally off-gasses poison, but it's so pretty. I'll need a new crinoline as well, Mrs. Pemberton declares, something more substantial. The assistant produces a crinoline so massive it could house a family of 4. The steel hoops are the circumference of a small planet. You watch Charlotte get strapped into one for her fitting, and she immediately knocks over a display of bonnets. The assistant pretends this is normal, which it probably is. Now, let's discuss trim, the seamstress says, producing boxes of lace, ribbons, and other decorations. The new jet beading is very popular for evening wear. Everything is beaded, fringed, braided, or otherwise decorated within an inch of its life. The Victorians believe that if a surface exists, it must be covered with something. Your new afternoon dress will apparently feature 17 different types of trim because subtlety hasn't been invented yet. And you simply must see the new aniline dyes, the assistant gushes, showing samples and shades that don't exist in nature, so much more vibrant than the old vegetable dyes. Aniline dyes are made from coal tar and are about as healthy as they sound. The purple one causes skin lesions. The red contains mercury, but they're bright, and that's what matters in Victorian fashion, being visible from space while slowly poisoning yourself. You're wrestled into a sample dress for measurements. The seamstress attacks you with pins, like she's performing acupuncture, muttering measurements that sound more like architectural specifications than clothing sizes. The dress weighs approximately as much as a small child and requires a structural engineering degree to put on. Of course, you'll need new gloves, the assistant says, producing boxes of kid leather gloves in every shade of toxic, and perhaps some of the new rubber galoshes, very practical for the London weather. The rubber galoshes are waterproof, which is revolutionary. They're also made with lead-based rubber compounds, because the Victorians cannot let a single item exist without adding poison to it. It's like they're playing a game of how many ways can we incorporate heavy metals into daily life. Charlotte is trying on a hat that appears to be made from an entire taxidermied bird. Not just feathers, the whole bird. Wings spread, glass eyes staring into the middle distance. It's perched on her head like it's about to take flight, if it weren't for the fact it's been dead for months. Birds are very fashionable this season, the milliner explains, showing you a selection of hats featuring increasingly elaborate dead wildlife. There's one with what appears to be an entire nest, complete with eggs. Another features multiple hummingbirds arranged in a tableau of avian tragedy. I'll take the dove, Charlotte decides, selecting a hat where a white dove appears to be crash landing into her skull. You're pressured into trying on various bonnets, each more ridiculous than the last. There's one with so many ribbons you can't see peripherally. Another day has artificial flowers that smell suspiciously like formaldehyde. The milliner insists you need at least 6 different bonnets for various occasions because God forbid you wear the same head covering to both morning calls and afternoon tea. And now for the pièce de résistance. The seamstress produces an evening gown in a shade of green that could probably be seen from orbit, perfect for the Ashford ball. The dress is magnificent in its absurdity. The skirt is so wide you'd need to enter rooms sideways. The bodice is cut so low your collarbones could catch cold. The entire thing is covered in arsenical green flowers, beading that probably contains lead, and trim made from who knows what toxic compounds. It's a beautiful, poisonous disaster. "You'll be the belle of the ball," Mrs. Pemberton exclaims, while you try not to think about the fact that wearing this dress is basically marinating in poison. The fitting takes 3 hours. By the end, you've been pinned, prodded, and measured for enough clothing to outfit a small army. Everything is toxic. Most of it is uncomfortable, and all of it is wildly impractical. But fashion, the seamstress promises everything will be ready within the week, assuming her workers don't succumb to arsenic poisoning first. As you leave the shop, you notice Charlotte scratching at her neck where the arsenical green collar of her new dress touched her skin. "It's nothing," she says. "Just a bit of irritation. Happens with all the best fabrics." The secret meeting location turns out to be Mrs. Whitmore's Tea Emporium, which seems like the last place you'd expect to find radical feminists plotting women's suffrage. But that's exactly the point. Between the doilies and the petit fours, behind a door marked Private Ladies' Retiring Room, you discover a group of women who've apparently decided that embroidery and death by arsenic dress aren't fulfilling life goals. Charlotte led you here after swearing you to secrecy 17 times. She knocked on the door in what was clearly a code: 2 short, 3 long, 1 short, and suddenly you're in a room full of women who look like typical Victorian ladies, but talk like revolutionaries who've had way too much caffeine. "Welcome, sister," says a woman in a perfectly respectable brown dress that probably still contains lead. "I'm Mrs. Blackwell, not the doctor, unfortunately, though she's a personal hero." The room erupts in knowing laughter. Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman doctor, is apparently their patron saint. The walls are covered with what looks like embroidery, but on closer inspection contains subversive messages. "Votes for Women" is stitched in tiny letters inside what appears to be a decorative flower border. These women have weaponized needlepoint. "We were just discussing Mary Wollstonecraft," another woman says, pulling out a copy of A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, hidden inside what appears to be a cookbook cover. "Have you read it?" You haven't, but you nod anyway, because admitting illiteracy about feminist texts seems like the wrong move here. The women are passing around pamphlets disguised as fashion magazines, drinking tea that might actually just be tea, revolutionary, and discussing things like property rights and education access with the fervor of people planning a heist. The Married Women's Property Act won't pass this year, Mrs. Blackwell says grimly. Parliament insists women can't possibly manage their own money. Meanwhile, I've been managing my husband's accounts for 15 years, another woman mutters. He thinks the numbers fairy does it. This gets bitter laughter from around the room. You're starting to realize these aren't just bored housewives. They're women who figured out the system is rigged and are quietly, methodically planning to unrig it. It's like Fight Club, but with better manners and worse corsets. What about you? Mrs. Blackwell turns to you. What brought you to our cause? You panic slightly because I woke up from the future and your lack of rights is horrifying. Probably won't go over well. I believe women are capable of more than playing piano badly and poisoning ourselves with cosmetics. This apparently passes muster because several women nod approvingly. Charlotte beams like she's successfully recruited you into her secret army of polite revolutionaries. We're planning a demonstration, one woman whispers, even though you're already in a secret room. At the next Parliament session, we'll wear our finest dresses. Appearances must be maintained, but we'll stand silently outside with our signs. What will the signs say? You ask. Taxation without representation is tyranny, she replies. They used it for the American Revolution. Don't see why we can't borrow it. The audacity of comparing women's suffrage to the American Revolution makes you want to applaud. These women are basically suggesting treason, but doing it so politely that no one can arrest them for it. Historians debate when exactly the suffrage movement began, but sitting in this secret tea room, you're watching it happen in real time. Of course, we must be careful, Mrs. Blackwell warns. Dr. Morrison has been diagnosing suffragettes with acute hysteria. 2 of our members are currently enjoying the rest cure. The room goes quiet. The rest cure, solitary confinement disguised as medical treatment, is the Victorian equivalent of being disappeared. You think of Dr. Morrison with his wandering uterus theories and cocaine prescriptions and feel a chill that has nothing to do with the drafty windows. How do we fight back without ending up in asylum? Charlotte asks, voicing what everyone's thinking. We play their game, Mrs. Blackwell says firmly. We remain perfect ladies in public. We host our teas. We wear our poisonous dresses. We smile and nod, but we also educate ourselves. We teach our daughters to read more than just household management guides. We slowly, carefully change minds. And we vote with our feet, another woman adds. I've stopped purchasing from shops that won't employ women. It's not much, but it's something. The meeting continues with discussions of strategy that would make military generals proud. These women have turned Victorian society's restrictions into camouflage, using tea parties as cover for plotting revolution. They're planning to infiltrate local school boards, secretly funding girls' education and writing letters to newspapers under male pseudonyms. Remember, Mrs. Blackwell says as the meeting winds down, we're not just fighting for ourselves, We're fighting for our daughters and their daughters. Someday, women will vote, own property, become doctors and lawyers. We may not see it, but we're planting the seeds. You think about telling them that in 2024, women can do all those things and more, but you don't. Instead, you take your pamphlet, hidden in a recipe book for household puddings, finish your possibly not poisoned tea, and file out with the others, looking like nothing more than ladies who've spent an afternoon discussing embroidery patterns. The night terrors begin around midnight, though in your defense, sleeping in a Victorian bedroom would give many one nightmares. The walls are covered in wallpaper that probably contains arsenic. The heavy curtains block out any hope of fresh air, and in every shadow looks like it might contain a ghost or a gas leak. You wake with your heart racing, unsure if it's anxiety or just the laudanum wearing off. Your mother, hearing you stirring, appears at your door like a corseted specter. "Can't sleep, dear. Let me fetch Dr. Morrison's sleeping draught." The sleeping draught turns out to be a cocktail of opium, alcohol, and what tastes suspiciously like chloroform. One spoonful, and you understand why Victorian ladies were always having visions. They were basically tripping on pharmacy-grade hallucinogens every night. "Perhaps you need more laudanum," your mother suggests, pouring a generous dose into a glass of water. Dr. Morrison says ladies of delicate constitution require stronger doses. You're about to protest that your constitution is fine when you remember that arguing might get you diagnosed with hysteria and sent for the vibrating chair treatment. You take a small sip and immediately feel like you're floating above your bed. The ceiling starts doing interesting things, patterns swirling in ways that definitely aren't architectural. There's also the new treatment for night terrors, your mother continues, producing a bottle of something labeled Godfrey's Cordial, very popular for ensuring peaceful sleep. Godfrey's Cordial, you later learn, is basically opium marketed for babies. The Victorians drug their children to sleep and wonder why everyone grows up with nervous conditions. You decline the cordial, but accept another blanket, which weighs approximately 40 pounds and is probably filled with lead paint chips. Knowing the Victorians, sleep, when it finally comes, is bizarre. The laudanum gives you dreams that would make surrealists jealous. You're flying through London in your crinoline, which has transformed into an actual hot air balloon. Edgar Weatherby is there, but he has butterfly wings. Thanks, subconscious, for that callback to dinner conversation. The Queen floats by on a throne made of tea cakes, decreeing that all corsets must be made of India rubber, which somehow seems both progressive and terrifying. You wake again at 3 a.m. to the sound of creaking. Every Victorian house makes noises like it's auditioning for a haunted house attraction. The gaslight flickers, creating shadows that dance on the walls like demented puppets. You reach for the bell pull to summon Mary, then remember she's probably asleep in the attic, which is approximately as warm as a meat locker. Perhaps some reading would help, you mutter, lighting a candle with a match that definitely contains white phosphorus. The matchbox warns about phossy jaw, a condition where your jawbone literally rots away from phosphorus exposure. Casual Victorian horror. Your bookshelf is a monument to approved female reading, The Lady's Guide to Household Management, Sermons for the Gentle Sex, and Moral Tales for Young Women. You pick up what looks like the least awful option, a novel by Mrs. Buss Gaskell that someone has hidden behind the sermons. Reading by candlelight while high on laudanum is an experience. The words swim around the page like confused fish, and you're pretty sure Elizabeth Gaskell didn't write this many descriptions of melting furniture. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimes 4, or maybe 14. Time has become negotiable under the influence of Victorian medicine. You decide to investigate a strange sound from downstairs, which is definitely the laudanum talking, because investigating strange sounds in a Victorian house at night is how ghost stories start. The stairs creak under your weight as you descend, candle held high, like you're in a Gothic novel. The sound turns out to be the new gas pipes settling, making noises like someone's strangling a trumpet. The drawing room looks different in the flickering light. All the chintz and doilies take on a sinister quality, like they're plotting something. You catch your reflection in a mirror and nearly scream. Between the white nightgown, the pale lead-powdered complexion, and the laudanum dilated pupils, you look like the ghost of Victorian womanhood, which, in a way, you suppose you are. Miss, Mary appears at the bottom of the servants' stairs, looking concerned. Are you quite well? Just couldn't sleep, you say, trying to sound normal and not like someone who's been drinking liquid opium. The house was making noises. Oh, that's just the spirits, miss, Mary says matter-of-factly. This house is built on an old plague pit. The spirits get restless sometimes. Though, she says this like it's as normal as commenting on the weather. The Victorians, you're learning, are incredibly practical about their supernatural beliefs. Ghosts are just another household inconvenience, like mice or rising damp. Would you like me to prepare some warm milk with brandy? Mary offers. It helps settle the house spirits, and also your spirits. You accept the brandy milk because at this point, why not add more alcohol to your pharmaceutical cocktail? You and Mary sit in the kitchen, two women from different classes united by insomnia and the casual Victorian acceptance that their house is probably haunted. The Ashford ball arrives like a tool-wrapped apocalypse. Your arsenical green dress has been delivered, and it's even more poisonous looking in full glory. Mary spends 3 hours constructing your hair into an architectural marvel that defies both gravity and comfort, incorporating approximately 17 pounds of false hair pieces because your own hair isn't sufficiently monumental for Victorian standards. Now for the finishing touches, Mary says, producing the face powder that's definitely giving you lead poisoning. She applies it liberally until you look like a well-dressed ghost. The rouge goes on next, mercury-based, naturally, giving your cheeks a flush that could either be beauty or early-stage heavy metal toxicity. The ballroom at Ashford House has been decorated within an inch of its life. Every surface drips with flowers, probably half of which are toxic if ingested. The gas chandeliers blaze overhead, occasionally shooting small fireballs that everyone politely ignores. The orchestra is warming up in the corner, and the dance floor has been polished to a lethal shine that will claim at least 3 crinolines tonight. Miss Fairweather, Edgar Weatherby appears at your elbow, looking dashing in his evening wear and slightly less consumptive than usual. May I have the honor of your first dance? You consult your dance card, a tiny booklet tied to your wrist with a ribbon that's already cutting off circulation. Victorian ladies book their dances like they're scheduling medical appointments. Edgar's name goes in the first slot, which is apparently significant because your mother looks ready to faint with joy. The orchestra strikes up a waltz, and you're immediately reminded that dancing in a crinoline is like trying to navigate a small boat through a storm while wearing a tent. Edgar leads you onto the floor, maintaining the regulation 6 inches of space between your bodies, because anything closer would basically be public fornication by Victorian standards. You look lovely, he murmurs, which is sweet considering you're wearing enough arsenic to kill a small horse. That shade of green is very becoming. Thank you, you manage, concentrating on not tripping over your skirts. The waltz involves a lot of spinning, and your crinoline has developed its own centrifugal force. You narrowly miss decapitating a passing debutante with your skirts. Other couples swirl past in a rainbow of toxic dyes. You spot Charlotte in her mauve dress. Aniline purple causes rashes, dancing with the butterfly-obsessed Ashford son. Mrs. Pemberton watches from the sidelines with the other matrons, probably calculating marriage prospects like they're trading stocks. The dance ends and you need air. The ballroom is approximately the temperature of the sun's surface, between the gas lights, the crowd, and everyone wearing 17 layers of clothing. You excuse yourself to the ladies' retiring room, where you find several women in various states of corseted distress. I can't breathe, gasps one girl, fanning herself desperately. Loosen her stays, commands another, and suddenly it's a Victorian medical emergency. Someone produces smelling salts, ammonia, because adding more chemicals always helps, while someone else fans her with a program. This is standard ball protocol. At least 3 women will faint tonight, and everyone will pretend it's due to delicate constitutions rather than oxygen deprivation. You escape to the terrace for actual air, where you find several other refugees from the dance floor. The men are smoking cigars because Victorian lungs haven't suffered enough, while the women fan themselves and pretend they're not sweating through their lead makeup. Magnificent evening, says a gentleman you vaguely recognize from dinner parties. Though I heard the Pemberton girl was seen reading Darwin, can you imagine a woman reading scientific texts? The scandal of female literacy strikes again. You bite your tongue to keep from mentioning that you've not only read Darwin, but also understand evolution better than most of these men who think women's brains are too small for complex thought. Back in the ballroom, the temperature has risen to roughly that of Venus. The ice sculptures are melting, creating puddles that mix with the highly polished floor to create skating hazards. You watch one gentleman slip and take down 2 ladies with his fall, their crinolines tangling in a spectacular disaster of steel hoops and silk. Another dance? Edgar appears again, apparently immune to the heat in his wool evening coat. You check your dance card and realize you've promised this one to Mr. Ashford. He approaches with the determination of someone about to deliver another butterfly lecture. Did you know, he begins, as you take the floor for a quadrille, that the Lepidoptera have the most fascinating mating rituals. This is happening. You're discussing butterfly sex at a formal ball while trying not to pass out from heat exhaustion. The quadrille involves a lot of precise stepping and hand touching through gloves, while Mr. Ashford explains butterfly reproduction in disturbing detail. You catch Edgar's eye across the room, and he's clearly trying not to laugh. By midnight, you've danced with 7 different men, heard about 4 different colonial adventures, pretended to be shocked by 3 separate scandals, and consumed enough champagne to make the whole thing bearable. Your feet are screaming. Your corset has compressed your ribs into new and interesting shapes, and you're pretty sure the arsenic in your dress is making your skin tingle. Such a lovely evening, your mother declares in the carriage home, while you try not to vomit from motion sickness combined with champagne and tight lacing. Edgar was very attentive. I think we can expect a proposal soon. Dawn creeps through the heavy curtains like a thief, finding you sprawled across your bed in what remains of your ball attire. Mary must have helped you out of the worst of it, but you're still wearing your corset because apparently Victorian women's spines need support even during unconsciousness. Your head pounds from the champagne, the laudanum nightcap, and probably mild arsenic poisoning from that dress. You sit up slowly, catching sight of yourself in the mirror. Your elaborate hairstyle has devolved into something resembling a bird's nest that's been through a hurricane. The lead makeup has smeared, giving you the appearance of a melting wax figure. This is it, peak Victorian womanhood, in all its poisoned, exhausted glory. Good morning, miss. Mary appears with tea. Bless her eternally patient soul. Shall I draw your bath? A bath sounds like heaven, even if it means another production with the copper tub and parade of hot water. As Mary helps you out of your corset, sweet oxygen, how I've missed you, you catch her humming something that sounds suspiciously like a suffragette song from yesterday's secret meeting. Mary, you say carefully, what do you think about women voting? She pauses in her unlacing, meeting your eyes in the mirror with a look that suggests she's calculating whether this is a trap. I think, miss, she says slowly, that any woman who can survive a London season in these contraptions is qualified to do anything a man can do. You want to hug her, but that would violate about 17 social protocols. Instead, you nod, and something passes between you, a recognition that the world is changing, even if it's moving at the pace of a drugged snail. The morning light reveals London in all its sooty glory. Through your window, you can see the city waking up, chimney sweeps already at work, adding to the coal smoke that turns everything gray, delivery carts clattering over cobblestones, and somewhere in the distance, the whistle of one of those unnatural trains that terrify your parents. You think about last night, the dancing, the toxic dresses. Edgar's actually quite sweet attempts at courtship, despite the bizarre social constraints. You think about Charlotte and her secret feminism, about the women meeting in tea shops to plot revolution with doilies. You think about how these people are living through the birth of the modern world, even if they're doing it while slowly poisoning themselves with their decor. Your mother wishes to speak with you after breakfast. Mary informs you, and something in her tone suggests this is significant. She's in the morning room with your father, and you dress in your simplest day dress, only 15 pounds of fabric instead of 20, and make your way downstairs. The morning room is suspiciously formal for a family breakfast. Your parents sit like Victorian Gothic portraits, backs straight, faces serious. Sit down, dear, your mother says, which is when you know something's definitely happening. We've received wonderful news. Your father clears his throat, rattling his newspaper like he's announcing war. Edgar Weatherby has spoken to me. He wishes to make you an offer. An offer, like you're a house he's considering purchasing, but you remember his laugh when you hit him with that scone, the way he actually listened when you made jokes, how he didn't seem to mind that you had opinions. In the Victorian marriage market, that's practically a love match. He's willing to wait until after your birthday, your mother adds, as if this magnanimity deserves a medal. Very considerate of him. And you sit there in your arsenic green morning room, lead powder still probably in your pores, organs slightly rearranged from years of corseting, and think about choices. Do Victorian women have choices? Sort of. You could refuse, be labeled a spinster, and spend your life as a burden to your family. You could accept and hope Edgar remains as relatively progressive as he seems. You could fake your own death and run away to become a governess, though that seems dramatic even for the laudanum. May I think about it? You ask, which causes both parents to look at you like you've suggested taking up bear wrestling. Think, your father repeats, as if the concept of women thinking is still theoretical. What is there to think about? Everything. Nothing. The fact that you're sitting in 1860 when you belong in another century entirely. The fact that despite all the poisons, restrictions, and casual misogyny, you found moments of genuine connection. Mary's quiet rebellion, Charlotte's fierce intelligence, even Edgar's awkward sweetness. I just want to be sure, you say finally. It's a big decision. Your mother's face softens slightly. Perhaps she remembers being young, facing her own version of this moment. Very well, she concedes, but don't take too long. Good offers don't wait forever. You escape back to your room, where the morning sun is now fully streaming through the windows. On your desk, hidden under the approved sermons, is the suffragette pamphlet. You pull it out, reading the words these brave women wrote about a future they might never see, a future where women vote, own property, make their own choices. You're living in the space between two worlds, the dying gasps of one age and the birth pangs of another. Every poisoned dress, every secret meeting, every small rebellion is part of that transition. You may be stuck in 1860, but 1860 won't last forever. Closing your eyes, you can almost see it, the future these women are fighting for, where corsets are optional, arsenic isn't a fashion statement, and women can be doctors, voters, anything they choose. It's coming, slow but inevitable, like dawn breaking over a very long night. And now, as the morning light softens into something gentler, let your breathing slow and deepen. The weight of those Victorian skirts fades away, replaced by the comfort of your own bedding. The tight-laced corset loosens, letting your lungs expand fully drawing in clean air free from coal smoke and gas fumes. All those formal rules and rigid expectations dissolve like morning mist, leaving only the quiet rhythm of your own heartbeat. The elaborate hairstyles, the poisonous cosmetics, the endless social performances, they're all drifting away now, becoming nothing more than curious memories from another time. You're safe in your own bed, in your own time, where you can vote and breathe and make choices freely. The gaslight flickers one last time and goes out, replaced by the soft glow of electric light, or perhaps just moonlight through your window. Those brave Victorian women got their future. You're living in it. Let the sounds of horses' hooves on cobblestones fade into the white noise of modern life, whatever that might be for you. The rustling of silk and taffeta becomes the whisper of your own sheets. Your breathing is easy now, unrestricted, natural. Rest now, knowing you can wake up tomorrow to a world where arsenic stays in murder mysteries, not dresses, where your choices are your own, where the air is cleaner, the medicine actually helps, and you can walk through any door without turning sideways. Sleep well and dream of whatever you choose. Butterflies without lectures, tea without revolution, dancing without dance cards. Just dream and rest and breathe.